Welcome to the podcast where we discuss health, health span, lifespan, and longevity. I'm Dr. Noor Gajraj. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Dr. Noor Gajraj. Today we're going to be talking about telomeres. Telomere shortening is one of the hallmarks of aging, and we have two experts in the field, Dr. Bill Andrews, and we'll be talking also to Sunny Wynn. So over to you, Sunny.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Noor, and allow me to introduce the incredible mentor. I've been following Dr. Bill Andrews for over a decade, and he's taught me so much about aging, how we age, why we age. He wrote this book called Curing Aging, and he's not only the world-renowned longevity scientist, but he studied and has a PhD in molecular population, bachelor in biology and psychology, with 35 years of biotech experience, creating many incredible patents, life-changing drugs. And if you really want to learn more, there's a really good documentary about him on YouTube called The Immortalist. Not only that, but Dr. Bill Andrews is a ultra marathon runner. He's ran over 100 ultra marathon, and the young age of 65, in 2012 he ran 138 miles by foot, under 60 hours nonstop, at 18,000 elevation feet. And there's an article of him in Popular Science magazine, and he's invented some incredible drugs that he'll tell you about: HGH, growth hormone, TPA, EPO, and literally every hospital, every ambulance, if you go in there, you will see the TPA drug, and he'll tell you more about that. But he also owns Sierra Sciences, his laboratory, the only laboratory, I think, believe in the world that tests telomerase enzymes. So, Dr. Bill, please meet Dr. Noor.
So I've been in biotech for 40 years. And when I first got into biotech, one of the first things I was assigned working with Genentech was to figure out a way to make HGH produced from bacteria bioidentical, because it had a methionine on the front end of it that all bacteria put on their proteins, and that methionine was giving baby dwarfs a severe immune reaction. So I created a expression system using bacteria where I put a signal sequence on the N-terminus of it and had it secreted into the periplasmic space of the bacteria. And when it was secreted through that membrane into the periplasmic space, the methionine was cut off. And at the time, we had no idea that it would be anything more than just a way of making baby dwarfs grow tall. So it became a illegal sports enhancing drug, and also a anti-aging drug, and bodybuilders use it and stuff like that. So it became big money, but at the time, nobody anticipated that. Then tissue plasminogen activator, which you probably know, every ambulance carries that now. I'm one of the inventors of that, working again with Genentech. EPO, erythropoietin, is another illegal sports enhancing drug that Lance Armstrong used to cheat. But at the time, when I was working with Amgen, we were only interested in making it so that people would have more red blood cells to give more energy. So the blood doping aspects of it didn't materialize until later. Thrombomodulin is a drug that I am one of the inventors of, made all kinds of variants of it, things like that. It prevents blood clots from forming. So it's actually like TPA breaks down blood clots, thrombomodulin prevents them. But it's been tough getting that through FDA clinical studies, mostly because there's so much competition, and the FDA doesn't want to put some of these other companies out of business. Betaseron, the very first drug ever for treating multiple sclerosis. I invented a lot of cancer drugs. I was actually National Inventor of the Year for my cancer research. One drug that I invented called Rytelo, R-Y-T-E-L-O, just got approved by the FDA. All this time, my obsession has been aging. I was always, I knew a lot about aging. I studied what aging is, why we age, and how not to age. I've been doing that my whole life, just trying to figure it all out. And I've realized over and over again that nobody on the planet really understands that. Everything you hear about is just marketers trying to get products on the market, trying to pretend they know what aging is and why we age and everything like that. But I've made it a life mission to really understand all that stuff. And I think that's really important, because if you're going to try to solve the aging process, you got to know why we age and how we age. before you can know how not to age. But I uh, I I decided back in when I was still in college and running anti-aging clubs in our discussions, the thing that made the most sense to explain all the twos and twos about aging was the Hayflick limit that had been published in 1961. The Hayflick limit was the first thing that ever came along that explained everything about aging. Didn't mean it was the only cause of aging, but it clearly was something that we realized. In fact, one of the people that was in my anti-aging clubs was Bruce Beutler, who got the Nobel Prize in medicine
Wow.
in 2010 or 2011 for discovering the toll-like receptor 9.
Right.
He and I were probably the two most active people, but we just decided there had to be something like ride tickets at an amusement park is the analogy that we came up with. The only explanation is how a cell would know how many times it has divided, how many more times it can divide, was the Hayflick was ride tickets at an amusement park, because we couldn't imagine any other kind of biochemical mechanism. But it was like we couldn't figure out what that was, where that was, or anything like that. So even in graduate school, when I went to graduate school, I focused on molecular biology and population genetics.
Hmm.
Okay, so population genetics is evolution, and but it's more the how and why of evolution, not the what and when.
Okay.
And
Well,
so, yeah,
let me introduce let me pick your brains a little bit. So what do you think fundamentally aging is?
it's the decline and failure of multiple tissues and organs. But it's actually more complicated than that, because it's multiple declines and failures of multiple tissues and organs. And this decline and failure of organs and tissues that are essential for normal bodily functions. Okay, so but even then, there's other things that can cause those exact same things that have nothing to do with aging. It's really hard to explain what aging is, but we all know what it is. And I will show a picture of Betty White when she's like
Yeah.
25 and
Yeah.
85. That's aging. I can't put a finger, I can't tell you why I know which photo was taken first and things like that. But I know that when somebody goes into your clinic and asks to do something to reverse my aging, they don't want to make their telomeres longer. They don't want to make their methylation patterns on their DNA different. They don't want to make their IgG glycosylation different. They want to pass what I call the Betty White test. They want to go from that 85 to that 25, and not just appearance, but look, feel, and behave like they're 25 again. And it's like, so the what is really, really complicated. I mean, there's a lot of things on the market right now that claim to reverse aging and things like that, but they only reverse the biomarkers, period. Okay, nobody's passed what I call the Betty White test. And that's what I really want to do, is I want to take some 85-year-old and make them 25 in every way imaginable, not just some biomarkers. I mean, and that includes energy, like you mentioned mitochondria before. There's so many things that cause decreased energy, and it's not just aging. There's a lot of products like urolithin A and NAD and things like that can provide you more energy, but it doesn't reverse your aging. It just makes you have more energy. And that's not good enough for me. I want to do all these things. And again, on mitochondria, 90% of the proteins that make up a mitochondria are encoded by the nuclear chromosome. It's really the nuclear chromosome that's really going on here. The epigenetics of producing mitochondria proteins and components is the nuclear chromosome that got to control. Ride tickets at an amusement park. I came up with eventually that telomeres had to be them. Okay, when I first heard about telomere shortening, and then also because of my background in mammalian expression and things like that, I started realizing that telomeres also have all the hallmarks of enhancer sequences that are found in the chromosomes that turn genes on and off even when they're 100,000 bases away from the gene. They fold over and come in contact with the promoter and turn promoters on to make genes go on. And that affects the epigenetics. Okay, so epigenetics is not DNA methylation. That's just epigenetic mechanism, turning genes on and off. The amount of on and off is that's what epigenetics is. And telomeres can function just like enhancers to fold over, turn genes on or off. And it's not an on-off switch, it's a dimmer switch. Okay. And so the promoters can turn the genes on and off to different levels. And the profiles that you see are what control aging. But telomeres are different from enhancers because telomeres get shorter, and the shorter they get, the less far they can reach to turn the genes on and off. So not only do we see telomeres causing a limit to our lifespan, they're also causing all the changes that we see in everybody as they get older. I say, no matter what else we do to try to cure aging, aging is never going to get cured unless we also solve the telomere shortening problem. And so that's my major focus, is really trying to figure that out. Now, TeloVital does not reverse aging.
Mhm.
It's like telomere shortening and lengthening is like a tug of war. We have shorteners and lengtheners in our reproductive cells, which is where we first discovered telomerase when I was at Geron
Mhm.
Corporation. The tug of war is a tie. So the reproductive cell divides it, telomere shortened, but then telomerase re-lengthens it back and forth, back and forth. And then all the other cells of our body, we only have the shorteners. But now I've added lengtheners with TeloVital to the other side, but it doesn't win the tug of war. It just slows down the tug of war. Now, we've also got data, tons of it now, showing that when telomeres get critically short, it's easier to re-lengthen them. My guess as to why we are seeing some anti-aging effects from some people when they probably have critically short telomeres in some tissues of their body, and they're seeing those telomeres get lengthened. The analogy that I like there is that telomeres are not this string of beads that's sticking out linear like the aglets on your shoelaces. They're rolled up like a ball of yarn, and when the telomere is big, telomeres can't get to it. Okay, and so you have to have a lot of telomeres in order to get to it. But when telomeres are short, the ball of yarn unfolds, and so it becomes easier for telomeres to access the telomeres. And once it binds to the telomere, tip of the telomere, it lengthens it. We don't have data yet, but on TeloVital at least, but we do have data on gene therapies that produce low levels of telomerase. We do see the shortest telomeres get longer. And even though the long telomeres still get shorter. So I
I
don't
was going
know.
to ask you something. So, in terms of telomeres, if you look at what helps prevent shortening, things like exercise, nutrition, stress reduction, sleep, social connections, good mental health, and purpose. Interestingly, all of those things, don't they mitigate telomere shortening? Is that right?
They prevent accelerated telomere shortening.
Right.
Okay, so when I was talking about the tug of war, you can reduce the number of people on the pulling side down to what's called the basal level rate of telomere shortening that's caused by the end replication problem. And that's a real scientific term.
Right.
So the end replication problem puts, if we had the perfect lifestyle and had the perfect genetics, the end replication problem will limit our lifespan to a maximum of 125 years. And when I say lifespan, I mean health span too. First one you said was exercise. I talk at conventions, conferences all the time on that one. What you want to do is you want to reduce inflammation and oxidative stress as much as possible, because those are the two things that cause accelerated telomere shortening.
Right.
And so I preach run, bike, kayak, swim, everything every day, or even more than once a day,
Mm.
but keep it fun. Okay.
Mhm.
And if it quits being fun, quit, because you're going to induce inflammation and oxidative stress otherwise.
Mhm.
And if you do it that way, it gets easier and easier and easier. And I've taken blood from runners just before, during, and after ultra marathons
Mhm.
and interviewed them and stuff like that. And there's a really great correlation between the people that just do it for the fun and adventure.
Mm.
They have less inflammatory markers, less, oxidative stress,
Mm.
even after they've completed an ultra marathon. Like if you are a person that runs every 2 weeks and run a marathon,
Mhm.
you'll do well,
Mhm.
but you'll be on your hands and knees throwing up, and you'll be stiff as a board from inflammation for 2 weeks afterwards. There's more. Don't smoke. Don't be obese. All these things accelerate telomere shortening and other kinds of damage. I recommend vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids because those have been the most published to actually reduce accelerated telomere shortening. But there's a book, I don't know if you've heard of it, the Kaufman Protocol. There's actually two books.
Yeah.
Those are the best books ever written. 10 years ago, I used to, when I spoke at medical conferences, I used to go over all the supplements that I would take and why and things like that. Now I just tell everybody, go read Dr. Sandra Kaufman's Kaufman Protocol books. I mean, they're really outstanding. Yeah, meditation, yoga. I speak at yoga conferences all the time, showing that people that do yoga and meditation all the time have longer telomeres than their friends the same age that don't. In all my research, I'm just trying to focus on, I'm not going to believe in anything that unless it actually induces telomerase expression. And that's what TeloVital is. TeloVitals are top nutraceuticals that actually induce the expression of telomerase more than anything else on the planet. It's not there yet. My goal is not to create a product that's just going to slow down the rate of telomere shortening and therefore slow down the rate of aging. I'm trying to find something that will win that tug of war. But Touchstone Essentials got a hold of me and asked if they could license some of these nutraceuticals that we had discovered that just slowed down aging. I said, sure. I mean, it is a good thing, but I'm too busy to market. I don't create products. So I license it to them and they put this on the market. I'm actually quite happy with that. And then I meet with, Sonny will tell you, I meet with people taking this product more than once a week. And there's just a tremendous number of like age reversal things going on. And I can only explain that by this fact that critically short telomeres get lengthened. So even though TeloVital doesn't win the tug of war, it is possibly lengthening the cells with the shortest telomeres. And that's why we're seeing some of these things. But I'm convinced that people should be taking TeloVital and not wasting their time with all the other products out there. I do take urolithin A myself. I do take NAD. So I'm not going to say don't take those products. I do things like to decrease my toxins and decrease sugar levels and things like that.
Tell us about your product, how it's taken, how it works, some of the side effects, benefits. People are going to want to know about the cost. How often are they going to take it?
Okay, well, first, let me say it's not my product.
Okay.
I just discovered the ingredients and licensed them to Touchstone Essentials. Sonny can answer most of those questions that you just asked, but I spend my time trying to find more potent things. Okay, I can say that there's been zero side effects that I've heard of, but I'm also very aware because I've been through so many clinical studies on so many drugs and stuff like that. There isn't a molecule on the planet that somebody's not going to be sensitive to. So there's going to be some people claiming of side effects, and the only thing you can do is tell the people to quit taking it. But so far, I haven't heard anything like that. There was a previous product that's how I got to know Sonny that I was the inventor of, and that's called, or at least, and I discovered the ingredients in, and that was isogenesis from Isogenics. And there were a lot of people that had side effects from that. And I'm just blown away that I haven't heard of anybody have any side effects from TeloVital yet. Totally let Sonny take over now because you were asking questions that he would be better for answering. And I'm very impressed with Sonny. I think I've been working with Sonny for over 10 years. He understands the science, but he also understands the business better than I do.
All right, then. So Sonny, maybe we can talk about those questions, how it's taken, how it works, how they can get it, those kind of things, the practicalities of getting this product and how to use it.
Yes, so Dr. Bill Andrews actually owns Sierra Sciences, where he tests all these botanicals, plants, herb extract, and they found five ingredients that actually turns on the telomerase enzyme to support the telomeres. So can you talk a little bit about the ingredients, Dr. Bill?
I can tell you that I get my ingredients, and they're actually fractions of plant extracts. They're not whole plant extracts. Whole plant extract contains like 200,000 different molecules or different types of molecules. And when you have that many things, you're going to always find something inhibiting whatever you want. So we never ever find whole plant extracts that will actually induce telomerase. So the company that I work with in New Zealand called Callahan, and it's run by my business partner, Christian Chase. He orchestrates that they fractionate all these plant extracts into smaller groups of molecules. So you fractionate with like column chromatography and things like that into fractions that will contain maybe 10,000 different types of molecules. So when he sends us samples to test, and we've tested over 500,000 different fractions of things, we'll get like 30 different fractions for each plant. Okay. And then we're lucky if one of those things will induce telomerase because, it's got to be separated, somehow separated from the inhibitors. And we don't know what the active molecules are in these plants. We've never gone ahead and purified it like we did with TA65. We don't know what the active things is, but we know that we've separated the inhibitors. And so now we're getting activity. So turmeric fraction, that is actually the most potent thing we've ever discovered. We actually looked at it a little more carefully and we found that it doesn't have any curcumin. But there's no way on the planet that I would believe that curcumin was the inhibitor. Okay. But we have to say this because people take turmeric to get their curcumin. And I'm a big believer in the value of curcumin, but it is curcumin free. So if you want to get curcumin, you got to get also turmeric from some other source. Since there's like 10,000 different molecules in this particular fraction and 1,900,000 or whatever molecules have been removed from this fraction, it doesn't mean curcumin was the inhibitor. It could have been one of those other many hundreds of thousands of molecules. But I wish curcumin was in there because it would make it a lot easier to market this product, but it's not there. But the same is true for all these other. You can't go to the grocery store and eat a pomegranate and expect the same results that you get from TeloVital because we had to separate it from all the inhibitors. And I'm going to be honest with you, I am not a plant expert person. Okay. So I don't really know as much about these particular ingredients as Sonny does. Sonny can tell you a lot about if I could say anything, it would be because I learned it from Sonny.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so really quick over some of the ingredients. The Bico skull cap has been used in Chinese medicine for hundreds of years to combat oxidative stress, but it actually turns on the telomerase enzyme. And they also add in black pepper, which is a king of spices, but it actually helps absorb more turmeric into your system. And it really actually turns on the telomerase enzyme. Hezi fruit in Ayurvedic medicine is known as king of medicine in Tibet, and it's used for traditionally treat a lot of variety of ailments, but it also turns on the telomerase enzyme. Blackcurrant extract is also powerful of antioxidants, and wheatgrass actually is used to help fight and prevent cancer. It's loaded with vitamins, minerals, and chlorophyll to help detoxify the body. And again, it turns on the telomerase enzyme. Garnet fruit is actually a very powerful plant that actually helps turn on the telomerase enzyme, and also pomegranate.
Let me add something. Sorry to interrupt you, Sonny. When I was talking about the tug of war, so the blackcurrant, the wheatgrass, and the black pepper both reduce people from the shortening side of the tug of war. Mm-hmm. The other ingredients add people to the lengthening side of the tug of war. So we got the best of both worlds. Plus the pepper is actually making it not just so that turmeric gets absorbed better, it helps everything get absorbed better. So I mean, I'm super impressed with my partner, Christian Chase and Touchstone for combining these other things in there too. So.
Yes, no problem. And we find that a lot of people who are taking this TeloVital for the last 6 months, the cognitive clarity improved. We've had many team members. One member is 94 years young, and her white hair, is actually turning black at the root skin, and wrinkles disappearing, energy. This is very common for most people. Immune health, better sleep quality. I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom anymore. Lower the stress, joint health, muscle recovery, strength and stamina. And it actually is pretty miraculous because these are some of my team members. And this is Susie Moya, June 7th. She walked up, took a picture, and as you see here, lots of wrinkles are disappearing, bags beneath her eyes disappearing, and she looks much, much younger. My friend Peter Mayhew, he had COVID, and he also had cancer. And 2.5 months ago, when he lied down, he couldn't breathe. He had to wear a device to help him breathe. He was really low energy. As you see here in this photo, he's looking much younger. His hair is darkening, wrinkles disappearing.
He is one of the people that is blowing me away with. I've been talking to him ever since he started TeloVital on Zoom calls and things like that. And the changes that I've seen, And there's at least one other person that I don't know if Sonny's going to talk about, that mall woman. She's in her 90s and miraculous results that I can only guess as to how it's happening.
So it's really impressive that the fact that it's working for pretty much everybody that's trying it, myself included, Dr. Bill included. But what really impresses me is Dr. Bill Andrews' wife, Molly Sheridan. She is on Touchstone products, and she actually been using the TeloVital ever since it came out. And maybe Dr. Bill could talk about her achievement. A young age of 68, broke the world's record of running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days.
Yeah, and she's been taking it since before it came out. Okay, just like I have. We've had TeloVital in bags given to us from the New Zealand group, but she signed up for this thing called the 777, which is you run 7 marathons on 7 different continents in 7 days. And she realized that nobody her age has ever done that. So she signed up so that if she finished it, it would be a world record. And they only allow 60 runners every year to do it because that's how much the airplane holds.
Right.
So the airplane, all the runners would get on the plane. They first flew to Antarctica, ran a marathon there, then flew to South Africa, marathon there, then Dubai, then Australia, Asia, Europe. Then she finished this and became the official world record holder for 68 years old. And I'll tell you, she looks a lot younger than 68 and act like, but she's been following my advice on everything for her, as long as I've known her. But if that wasn't enough, she went to the North Pole. This is a picture of the boat she's on. She with some other runners now. She right after she finished this 777, she thought, well, she did the South Pole. She's got to do the North Pole now. So she got on this ice cutter boat and they got off the boat and ran a marathon in the presence of polar bears and everything like that. This is them walking to the course. Polar bears, they had to have people out there with shotguns to scare the polar bears away because polar bears are super hungry up there. And she's at the geographical North Pole. That ladder is something the boat carried with them and found a big opening in the water, in the ice, and runners took turns going for a swim in the water. And I think they're kind of nuts. This guy, Eddie Stone, he's become my best friend now too. He just flat out said to me, I don't care about profit margins. I just want products that really benefit people. I do a podcast called Up One because what I do is what I call critical meta-analysis, which is somebody makes claims about a product. I do all the work. I don't just do meta-analysis, which is looking at all the studies and figuring out which ones say which, because you get two piles of paper. Some say it works, some say it doesn't work. I do critical meta-analysis where I go through and I look at the data, the experimental design, data analysis, construct validity, computer modeling, all this kind of stuff. I look at all this stuff. And when I get done looking at all the papers, I only have one pile left. They all say the same thing. I've actually written reports now that I've given to Eddie Stone showing that their products are really dynamite. And like glucocontrol, which is it converts sugar into fiber. Eddie didn't even understand how it happened, but I figured it all out. And I wrote a whole study on it, like the biochemistry pathways and stuff like that. And glucocontrol is something everybody should be taking because sugar is bad for you, but fiber is good for you because they're like cages that trap toxins. And you lose it in your pee or whatever like that. It's really good. The data that I've seen on zeolites is really excellent. Fulvic acid. Fulvic acid is the active ingredient in shilajit. Okay, but no other companies sell fulvic acid because why purify it from shilajit when they can just sell shilajit? I'm super impressed with Touchstone. Okay, the super green. I take all these products myself. Okay, and I do have to pay for them.
Yeah, so when this TeloVital first came out, we recommended one pill per person, but the first 2 months we didn't see too many results quickly, and we asked a couple of friends and teammates to start taking 2 pills a day, and that's when we started seeing incredible results. And Dr. Bill actually owns Cedar Sciences, and he's still doing a lot of testing and research on a lot of breakthroughs. Can you please talk about Cedar Sciences, Dr. Bill?
Well, our number one goal is to cure aging, and that's all we do. And it's not, we don't work on just telomeres, okay? But the fact that, as I said before, no matter what else we do to try to cure aging, aging is never going to get cured unless we solve this telomere shortening problem. We put most of our effort towards that. And so we've tested over 10,000 different plant extracts. We've also tested a whole bunch of molecules, chemicals, things like that, that provide us at least with proof of concept and kind of like some guidance as to what kind of molecules to look for in plants. But I have all these departments, scientists running cell biology, molecular biology, chemistry, et cetera, et cetera. In the picture below, if you want to zoom in on that picture, that's our robotic room.
Mm.
Okay, so we have $2 million robots there. And the robots are the things underneath the black awnings. They're not the people. The people are human. I only say that because a lot of people think that they're the robots. So the robots, they can test up to 4,000 different samples a day. Okay, and most of them are nutraceuticals or fractions of plant extracts. But a lot of times we do random chemicals, or our medicinal chemistry group would design chemicals trying to learn how to regulate the telomerase gene. And so these things, they can run night and day. We can test up to 4,000 different things a day. And we've discovered a lot of different things. Some of the chemicals are even more potent than the nutraceuticals, but they require like 12 years of clinical studies and $2.6 billion, which is the average cost of getting something approved in the clinical studies. They're a long ways from being ever even considered as a human drug, and they'll probably fail for some side effect or something like that. So we have tested close to 20,000 nutraceuticals now. The slide that Sonny just showed is old. In fact, a slide you showed earlier, Sonny, it says I've been in biotech for 38 years. That's actually 44 years now. So you're showing a really old slide. So we keep looking for more and more plant extracts, but we're only limited by the cost of doing these testing. The testing costs us $2 million a month to do the screening of the robots. And so, especially since COVID, our source of fundings have dried up a little bit, so we can't continue full speed as much as we were before, but we're going as fast as we can. Even when we find hits, they go back to the other hits, meaning a molecule that induces telomerase. They go back to the other departments to do careful analysis. We don't do human studies here, but we do test for toxicities and things like that in human cells in a petri dish. Okay, I mean, if something fails in a petri dish, it's definitely going to fail in a human too. But the vice versa isn't true. If it passes in the petri dish, it doesn't mean it's going to pass in the human. So that's why plant extracts are good, because they've already generally regarded as safe. But we also work on oxidative stress and inflammation and cancer. We got projects for treating cancer, diagnosing cancer. I think I was National Inventor of the Year for my cancer research in the United States. So I'm big into cancer. It's just that I consider cancer to be an aging-related disease. And I think the number one way of treating cancer is to lengthen telomeres, to boost our immune system. Cancer rates go skyrocketing when immune systems start senescing. And so lengthening telomeres in our immune cells provides the strength. Plus, every time I would look at a cell that had critically short telomeres, I would see in the microscope chromosome rearrangements and stuff like that were visible with the light microscope.
The last question, Dr. Bill, can you talk about how important it is to keep our telomeres long, because you've done so much research of all these diseases and over 60 diseases associated with telomere shortening?
Yeah, well, every disease now. The only diseases that I know of right now that are not associated with telomere length are alcoholism and sickle cell anemia. Okay. Every single drug has now been published. Every disease has been published in a peer-reviewed journal showing the correlation between telomere length and the onset of the disease. And these diseases are actually good for the species because, we haven't talked about the why we age, but it's eliminating the longer lived people. Anybody who's already raised their young increases the ability of offspring to interbreed, to increase gene shuffling and increase diversity within the species, which gives the species a better chance of surviving rapidly changing environments. So all these diseases here, every single one of them preferentially kill off the older people, or the ones I like to call longer lived people. Turns out there's never been any evolutionary advantage to getting rid of these diseases because they're actually good for the species. And to eliminate the longer lived, to increase the chances that the offspring will interbreed, to increase shuffling, gene shuffling even more, to increase diversity. So we have all these diseases. Every one of them is actually, its incidence is increased tremendously because of telomere shortening. Let me just talk about liver cirrhosis there on the third from the top right. We all know that when you drink alcohol, you kill liver cells, and that doesn't bother you much when you're young because you have other cells that can divide that I call reserve cells. So every organ or tissue has frontline cells and reserve cells. And frontline cells is where all the action is. The bodily functions are all functioned by that. And then the reserve cells just sit there doing nothing. Okay, so you kill the frontline cells of your liver, then the reserve cells divide to replace those cells. So when you're young, you never even know you're having any problem. But then because of the Hayflick limit and the telomere shortening, when you get to be 40 or 50, you've essentially run out of ride tickets, okay, run out of telomeres. And so your reserve cells in your liver can't divide anymore to replace those killed frontline cells. And so you accumulate a lot of dead cells on your liver, and that's liver cirrhosis. Going two below that, muscular dystrophy. The same thing happens with the dystrophin gene variant. Okay. Your muscle cells don't survive as long as normal. They die off quicker. But that's okay when you're young because you have the other cells to divide to replace those killed cells. But when you get to be 40 or 50, you run out of ride tickets, run out of telomeres, and you can't replace those anything anymore. And that's when you start getting the symptoms of muscular dystrophy. I mean, I can describe an example of every one of these diseases, but this again is another old slide that if I put every disease now that has been shown to be connected to linked to telomeres, you wouldn't even be able to read the print. Okay, it's so many.
Dr. Noor, do you have any other question for Dr. Bill?
No, that was wonderful. Very good. Thank you, Sunny and Dr. Andrews. Well, telomere shortening is one of the hallmarks of aging, and this has been a wonderful opportunity to discuss the topic with two experts in the field. Thank you so much, and thanks for everyone for listening. Please subscribe to my channel and read my new book, 100 Pathways to Longevity. Add 25 years to your life, available on Amazon.